Just a few days out from the 2023 Preakness. Time to talk about the second jewel of racing's Triple Crown. We'll also talk about a couple of the stakes races that lead up to the Preakness, that pick 4 that starts in race 10 at Pimlico on Saturday, May the 20th. Very excited to have a good friend of ours back joining us to talk some racing again. You have seen her at Gulfstream Park, Canterbury. You've heard her voice calling races all over. Angela Hermann, how you doing, friend?
Hello, Gino. Nice to have some time with you again. We always get into these long chats and have a lot of fun doing it. I'm glad you had me on.
So we're going to talk Pimlico and the Preakness Pick 4 on Saturday. But before we do, as you and I record on May the 17th on Wednesday afternoon, we're only about a week out from opening day at your home, Canterbury. Just give me a little primer. What can we expect this year? It's been so awesome the last few years to see the response, because Canterbury has done what all of us complain and scream and want the tracks to do. They've lowered the takeout and they've made it better for us betters.
Yeah. Well, we tried to listen and implement new ideas as often as it is feasible, and it's going to be a different year around here. We have a different schedule. We're going to be racing to start Saturdays, Sundays, and Wednesdays. Of course, our opening weekend is going to incorporate Memorial Day, but then we'll add Thursdays a little later in the season and go back to our 3-day weeks as we close it out again in the middle of September. We're at the mercy of the weather up here a bit more, so we have to keep an eye on how things are. It's really warming up now, so I mean, we feasibly could have started by the weather standards, but there's horses on the ground, so we're going to start out next Saturday. It's going to be me and Kevin and Paul, Jeff in the mix. We've got some new interns this year, but a lot of the same faces that you've seen at Canterbury, and I'm very excited. I mean, it's so different around here than it is like at a Gulfstream. They race year round, and you still have a lot of fun doing it, but it's really hard to capture the excitement that this time is right before a live season starts, and we've all caught it.
I try to compare some of the tracks that it's like, if Emerald Downs has kind of a similar vibe when they have like a big weekend, because it's like the whole town, everyone in the area is out there. There's such a great energy. It's so much fun. And Canterbury's even that times like 5. The on track experience is just an absolute blast. You guys have some of the best patrons, and there's just always such a great energy. You can sense it watching the track feed.
Yeah, it draws all kinds and a lot of families, and that's why we do race during the day on Sundays. We have evening coast the rest of the week, and just some different events cater to each night and each sort of crowd that we draw live, because we generally do draw a very good crowd. So we have to mix the activities for both the off track and on track crowd. But it does get very exciting. Days like July 3rd, and I mean, even Memorial Day, Labor Day, some of those holidays where people are in town looking for something to do, they generally come here, and we put on some interesting, unique sort of races, events, etc. And it makes for a very different experience than any other track I've ever worked at.
So Angela and I are going to now dive into Pimlico for Saturday. We're going to talk about the Preakness, which is race number 13. We'll talk about the races leading up to that, races 10, 11, 12, and 13. It's the pick 4 at Pimlico. And we're going to look at the daily racing form past performances. These are the Formulator past performances that I love. We were actually talking about it before we started recording, Angela. They just make it so easy as a handicapper for us, because it's like, oh, one click replay, one click chart, one click pedigree, one click all the stats that you want. So right now, leading into Preakness, DRF has a really cool promo. If you want to sign up and bet with DRF bets, they'll give you a $250 deposit match and a $10 free bet, plus free Formulator past performances. So it's a 3-step process. Sign up, use the promo code winning, and then you're going to get that $10 free bet right off the bat as soon as you register. Deposit $250, they'll give you a $250 match bonus right away. And then they're going to load up 10 Formulator past performance cards for you. And then every time you wager 50, you get another one for free. So that's one of the things I like, Angela. I think if you're playing the races and you're wagering a lot, I don't think you really should have to pay that much for past performances. This information shouldn't be all that much. So DRF and DRF bets, when you sign up and you bet with them, they give you the opportunity. Every time you bet 50, you get another card for free. So a nice perk if you're going to be playing, you can at least get these past performances for free and get a bunch of credit.
Well, hard to match that deal to go along with it, a wagering platform and whatever you need to wager with it. And I can't speak highly enough to Formulator. It's what I use day in and day out. And it has a great notes feature too, where you can keep your own notes of how your day's going, of what you see, of what might not show up in a form. They only have so much room at the end. I mean, you see all the abbreviations and all the verbiage that goes in there only tells a part of the story. So if you make your own notes in that notes section and they show up the next time the horse runs, it saves you from watching another replay or having to dig that much deeper, expedites your handicapping process, and makes it overall an easier, faster way to hopefully put dough in your pocket. But that's a good deal. And if I wasn't already such an old, hardened, grizzled gambler, maybe I would be able to dive in on it. But if you haven't, please do.
The DRF.com and DRF bets. You're already going to be there looking at the past performances. So just click on DRF bets, sign up, use that promo code winning, and you'll be all set for a big Friday and Saturday at Pimlico. So Angela, let's start. We'll end with the Preakness because that'll be race number 13, and that'll be the end of this pick 4 that we dive into. And the pick 4, the pick 4 begins with a fun turf sprint. I mean, you have a big field like this. You have a 5 furlong turf sprint, the opportunity for chaos, for fast early pace. You have nothing better drawn down to the inside who is really, really fast, but as expected in a 5 furlong turf sprint, there's going to be others that are quick. Even right next door, a horse who's shown a lot of speed on the dirt. You have Artemis City Limits, who wants to be kind of close. I think he can press a little bit and sit off, but he wants to be close and forwardly placed. We know the 6 That's Right is going to be quick. Uncle Ernie's probably forwardly placed for Harp. I mean, you get through this field, good amount of speed as expected. How do you see this thing shape up? Who are some of the horses who you'd want in the pick 4?
I think you kind of set the table for who I would want to use in the pick 4, and that's really anybody who can come from just off the pace. So I guess I would say that my top pick would be Smokin' Jay in there, just because he drew furthest to the inside of horses that like to pass. You did see him face off and get defeated by Beer Can Man last time around. It just wasn't that big a difference between them. Tyler Gaffalione, I thought, had maybe a bit more left in the tank. He wasn't exactly scrubbing on Smokin' Jay. Felt like maybe Beer Can Man was out of horse. Now, it was his first start since February of last year, so that's understandable. But given where they drew, I would use both of these if I thought that they were going to be their morning line prices. I think they'll both get bet. But for that race that they put in last time at Keeneland in similar conditions, then I think probably a similar setup that they'll get today. Tons of speed in front of them.
Yeah,
I thought that it would set up well for them.
If you're betting, like if you're looking for a horse to bet, or a few of the pick 4 horses, I think those are the 2 that I would 100% need to use because of the trip that we projected. In the same exact sentiments on Beer Can Man, the post could be the detriment for him. That could do it in. He has a little versatility. So maybe, I mean, you don't want to be hooked out wide versus where the 5 is, but he should take a good step forward off of that race. Like he ran like a horse who needed the race, right? Like he just
very much so.
Like a little short late. He was favored in that race, but as you pointed out, it wasn't as if Smokin' Jay was bad. He got bet that day too. He was a major player. He was 7-2 in that race. I think he fits really well, and he could be set. Maybe had a little bit of regression in his second start off the bench, and now he could be set to take a step back forward, third start of the form cycle. 5 and 13 were all over for me. And I guess like of the speeds, I'd probably give the one the most look from down inside, having to go. He actually has outfinished some of these other shorter price horses in here, like Artemis City Limits. And I think for him, of all the horses, he's got the rail. He has to go second start off the break. I might try to use like 1, 5, and 13 in here, Angela.
I suppose that would be fair for me. I would definitely use 5 and 13, and I would give a little extra forgiveness to Smokin' Jay, given the good going last time around. Off turf has not been necessarily his thing. Does a little bit better on a firm course at 5, fits him perfectly. But I was thinking along the same lines of you, trying to find one of the speed horses who could duel and hang on.
But they may not.
Well, I tend to favor outside drawn horses in that particular scenario.
Sure.
There's so much working against a rail drawn horse that's going to be the low price that he's at. That's right. That's a little bit to me.
Sure.
As a horse who could hang on.
Fresh. Yep. And he's a little bit better at 5, right? All 4 of his wins have came at 5 furlong. Seems like 6 is just a little too far. And even 5.5 might be a little beyond his scope. And he's fresh. one way to go. Just let him loose. If the one gets stopped a little or has a little trouble down on the inside, this horse will be there pressing. I actually think I had
Right.
him fourth in this spot. So yeah, if you're going to shorten up in one of the races following this, or maybe in the Preakness, this would be a race to throw in a horse like That's Right at
Yeah.
12-1.
Working lights out, is proven over this course, proven at this distance. Drew, like we said, to the outside of what should be a lot of his pace pressure. I think that maybe Four Harp could keep things hot, but most of the horses to his outside maybe don't have his brand of speed. So he might be in a good place. He might be biting off more than he can chew, but it'll be a much better price than just about anybody else we've
Yeah.
mentioned. So if I'm going to use a price in there to try to hang on, he would be it.
Yep, it'll give you a good run for your money too. That's Right at 12-1. That's a look at race number 10, the first leg of the pick 4 on Preakness Saturday. Let's move to race number 11, which is the grade 3 Maryland Sprint. We'll go 6 furlongs on the dirt here. So the number 8 in this race will likely be favored. The 7 and 8 will probably take a good amount of money in here between the two of them. 7 is Nakatomi, who is 5-2 on the morning line. The 8 is Straight No Chaser. So I guess he's actually the second choice, but he's coming off of a big performance with a big buyer speed figure. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him actually go favored over Nakatomi. But I think these two will be two of the top contenders in here, just from a discussion point and a starting point. They do have completely opposite running styles, though, Angela. We have a closer in Nakatomi and Straight No Chaser, who's very, very quick and ships out here for trainer Dan Blacker.
Well, and here's my problem with Straight No Chaser. Straight No Chaser is owned by my racehorse. And regardless of what form these horses bring to the table, they take a ton of money. And
Yep.
it's Straight No Chaser, while he's a big competitor in here and probably the horse to run down, he's just almost never going to provide value. But given the fact that he's a West Coast horse in amongst a lot of East Coast horses, I'm curious what your general school of thought is, taking a horse like him shipping to the opposite coast and taking on some of the East speed. I mean, how do you take him?
Yeah, with the speed horses, it doesn't bother me, because a lot of times the West Coast speed horses are equally are faster, and that's sort of the equalizer. You know, they can be faster, and I actually think his form overall is pretty good. But I'm completely in agreement with you. He's, depending on what your approach is in the pick 4s and stuff, he's a horse that I wouldn't be betting to win, and he's going to be undervalued. I'm not sure if I could completely toss him out. I'd probably prefer him over Nakatomi of the shorter prices, just because, same like we were saying in the prior race, you know what you're going to get with him. You're going to get a better run for your money. He's going to be forwardly placed. Nakatomi could get into a little bit of trouble. I think the horse, though, I prefer is probably the outside. Wonder where Craig is. This one's a little interesting to me, Angela. A horse who goes out for trainer Brittany Russell, who has been incredible to start this meet. Like a really good barn, always in the 25 to 30%, but so far 7 of 12 to start. That'll get the job done. This horse
on 6 of them. Yeah.
Yeah, this horse loves Pimlico. Has 1 and 2 of 3 starts with the runner-up effort. And if you just look at his form overall, he was getting really good. He went out to Dubai for the Golden Shaheen in March of 2022. He was off for a few months. And then when he came back in July of 2022, he wasn't quite at the level he was before. He was fine. He ran a couple okay races. I think he may have just needed a little time. Sometimes that journey to Dubai takes a lot out of you. And I feel like that was a good performance to start the year for him on April the 13th. He's had a month off now. He has some speed. He's shown that he can sit off a little bit, and I like that because he's drawn to the outside. I'd love to see him sitting just off of Straight No Chaser. So I'm definitely going to be using the 10, Angela, and Exotics.
That's fair enough. And he ran so well off the lap. I mean, he looked done at the top of the stretch.
He did.
Fought back very gamely. And I respect that effort. And it would need to be duplicated. That's the only thing. And I wonder where Craig is. Looked, I don't want to say spent. You can't tell how a horse is when they go back. I didn't follow him back to the
No, he did. Yeah.
No, even after the wire, though, he just gutted it out so nicely. And taking on a horse like Straight No Chaser, I think, is, too much for me to use him on top. And I thought these two would take too much starch out of each other. So I actually kind of like the horse in between them, Hello Hot Rod.
Nice.
And Hello Hot Rod has speed, and he does like to be on the front end, but I don't know if he's as much of a need the lead sort as I kind of get the feeling.
Well, especially at this trip. right? Cutting
Yeah,
back a little bit. He
right.
should, that race at Remington that you see at 6 furlongs where he's off a little and he sits third, he finishes third,
Yeah.
he sits maybe 3 or 4 lengths off. A trip like that would probably bode very well in a race like this.
Well, yeah, and he's not fast enough to keep up with Straight No Chaser and Wonder
Nope.
Where Craig is, but if they clear away from him and he stays towards the outside, he's a steady one pace sort of horse that can keep himself in it while not necessarily leading the way, but he's going to keep going. And if you need a horse to maybe have a little bit more, coming back from 7 to 6 and getting the outside is good enough for me. And Hello Hot Rod seems to perform very well, I guess, when he's close to the lead, and I think he'll be able to do that from that post. He'll just be a much better price than either one of the horses
Absolutely.
around him. And, he's got as much versatility as either one of them do. And frankly, none of them have that much to them. But I was looking for a
No.
horse that was close enough to the pace, still willing to
And
pass. So that was him.
and for me, the one who I can't bet him to win, but I can throw him in a pick four situation because I think he'll offer the value is Prevalence. And it's
Ooh,
because his he's one of those horses who, if he is 6 to 10 to 1, that's fair because he's just not a consistent horse. But
no,
he's capable on his best days of showing up with races that are as good as anybody in this field. Like his A game that he's shown a couple different times is awesome. The problem is we don't see it very much. Now, can you go through his last few races and say, he lost to Up to the Mark, who is now a grade one winner. He lost to Endorsed, who had won 3 races in a row at that point in back-to-back graded stakes races. He lost to Sibelius, who went over and won the Dubai Golden Shaheen. Can we say, Jackie's Warrior, he's losing to in a race that sends him to the bench for a little while? I know it's a lot of excuses to make. I know we've got some muddied up form, but the key is the price, right? He's going to be 8-ish, 10-ish to 1 because I agree with you. I think those horses to the outside are going to take some money. As long as this horse is 6 or above, I could flop him into a pick 4 and just hope that it was one of these good days versus one of the bad days. I don't think I could play him to win. He's just more of
mm,
an inclusion in multi exotics.
okay. Well, I see your point, but I think the prevalence being trained by the guy he's trained by, who's been going really well lately and ridden by Irad
Well,
Ortiz, will not provide that sort of value on the board. I don't think you'll get that on him. I think you might
no, and
get 4 or 5 to 1.
that's the concern. If he is that, it's not worth it. Like this number right here is he's got to be closer to this because that's fair for his chances of winning this race. He's not
Yeah.
consistent enough to be half of that. So,
Yeah, and I agree. And I got to look at him a couple of those times, and he's
but
not a bad looking horse. Don't get me wrong, but I just can't match up those looks with those races. They just don't make any sense to me.
it,
And
and
trying the turf,
that's just sometimes that's just like nothing's working. Let's just try something. It's one of those
exactly
like last ditch efforts. Throw something at the wall and see what sticks. And
right. And now
it,
it's blinkers.
yeah, and so who knows with Prevalence? But I think you and I were both kind of looking for a horse like that and like the 9, right? Like
Yeah,
who can
exactly.
who's going to be a little bit of a price who can sit just off. I don't
Yeah.
know if those horses win this race, but if you're listening and watching this, you can kind of hear our analysis and how we were trying to get to them and why we were sort
Right.
of looking for that template of a horse.
We're complimenting and then tossing. So
Yeah,
it's one
exactly.
of those kinds of races.
It's exactly. So I look at race number 11, the Maryland Sprint, which is the second leg of this pick 4 that leads into the Preakness. Let's move to race number 12. It's the James W. Murphy. Now, this race I thought was a fun one to, just from a handicapping standpoint. I do think that the horse to the outside, if you like the 9, this is a very accomplished horse. I would have no problem with people who like this horse, but this horse is drawn wide with the blinkers on. I think we'll want to be more forwardly placed. And I found like 3 or 4 fun long shots that could be really nice value at their prices. So from just overall, I really enjoyed handicapping this race. And I think you can, take different stances in here. How did you see this race, Angelo? Was this a race where you shortened up? Did you think the favorite, the 9 to the outside, was too tough to beat, or do you try to chuck this horse out and use a few others? What's the approach?
I took your former opinion just because at this point of their lives, most of them aren't pure defined turf horses. A lot of them are taking this as plan B. Now, that's not the case for everybody in here, but This is really the only horse who's been established at doing what he's doing. I like the outside draw for him. I don't mind that at all, especially with the
Yeah.
blinkers on. I think that as long as he's alert, then he doesn't need the lead, but he'll keep himself in close range. And if you think you have the best horse, we talk
This
about this ad nauseum. Put him on the lead. At least
and
keep him close.
this is where Pratt makes some riders have a tough time with the horses like this because like you're saying they won't put him on the lead and they'll sort of sit, or then they will put him on the lead and then they'll kind of get in between. He's like one of the best at knowing, should I just sit off or do I need to go a little faster? I feel like he always makes the right call with these types of horses in this type of situation. So that's a look at the 9 for motion for Pratt. Little Red Feather. Some of the fun long shots that I looked at. So if we're using Mo Stash as a sort of a common rival, a Western Yarn comes out of the race where he was right behind Mo Stash. I was gonna play. I don't even want to talk about this race. Talk of the Nation in the.
You brought it up.
Okay, so this was a bad beat last week when a couple weeks ago in the American Turf. I'm closing in pick 3s with talk in the American Turf after having the huge long shot go wire to wire in the sprint. I'm closing with Talk of the Nation and the horse who runs second. I don't even want to give him. I don't even want to talk about it. I was going to say I didn't even want to say the name because I've been so upset. Okay. I've been so upset about it. But no, the horse got a great run up the inside. Took the lead for a second, looked like was going to win, and then got nailed. So I was closing pick 3s like 4 or 5 times, and I had all of the other exotics that would have continued to roll. So that was one that will sting me. But what made it even worse, I had Farbridge and Talk of the Nation, and Talk of the Nation gets scratched like a minute before the race, and then Farbridge loses right at the wire. So it's like, wow, I got scratched, and then the other one finished second. I think Talk of the Nation
still dwelling on that.
Yeah, it's not like it bothers me 2 weeks later or anything, right? Not at all.
Yeah, not like you couldn't pick out a game 6.5 years ago where you got a buzzer beater and lost out on a 5-leg parlay, but we won't go down that road either.
Yeah, I was gonna say all of those. You always remember the ones that irk you more than all those. All those winners are the good ones.
I just know you will.
the concern I have with this horse more than even liking the horse though is just how's it going to shape up? Because it does look like this race has at least an honest amount of pace with the 9 to the outside, with the 1 fantastic again, with a Western Yarn in here. Wouldn't even be surprised to see a horse like the 2 stretching out, show a little bit more speed. We know the 4 is quick. So, they could be moving in here. That's my only concern. Like, I like this horse. I'm kind of curious to see how he stacks up class-wise. But race shape-wise, I don't know if he can sit. He doesn't really seem, watching his races, like a horse who wants to sit off as much. He seems a little bit better on the front end. That led me to this horse, Angela, the 5, circling the drain. So he's a little inexpensive, in that he broke his maiden, for in a maiden claiming spot. But since that, he's actually run pretty well. He's coming off a race in the Tessio. He's behind 2 horses that are going to run in the Preakness, behind Perform and Coffee with Chris. And let's look at his pedigree, which is nice with the DRF Formulator past performances. All you have to do is just click on the dam, and it'll take you right to the pedigree. Who's Cozy? The dam was a good one. She was a 2-time winner on the turf. She was graded stakes placed and multiple stakes placed on the turf. So you feel like, okay, good turf pedigree from the dam. Then you go to the siblings. You have a 3-time turf winner in Daddy's Cozy. You have Who's in Town, who only tried turf 1 time, but ran 3rd on it. And you have another couple turf winners. Comfy and Cozy was a horse who won on the turf. And you have Campaign Vows, who won on the turf. So the dam was grade 3 placed on the turf, was a multiple winner. There are 4 winning grass sibs. So pedigree-wise, I think the horse will take to the turf. If we're looking at, speed figures, he's a little underneath, but he's actually coming out of some stakes races. So from a class standpoint, he's actually faced pretty tough company. And in the setup, what I like is he broke his maiden on the lead, but I don't think he's going to be close to the lead here. He's much more of a closer. And that was a race that went really slow early on. I think he could get a great trip in here. He has a nice pedigree. Price might be right. He's a horse who I'm going to throw in into a pick 4. I had 5, 9 as my 2, and then a bunch of question marks after that.
Well, I had like 9 over 5 and 6. I think that's probably the way that I would play this race unless I just single the 9 and move along in a horizontal. But I was interested in circling the drain, like you mentioned. I looked at his pedigree, and I mean, who's cozy obviously is inclined towards turf anyway, given her blood. But circling the drain hasn't tried it yet. I didn't love the way that things set up in the Tessio and how he didn't capitalize on it the same way Perform did. Now, granted, Perform is
Absolutely.
in the Preakness, but he ended up beating 2 horses
But
home
it's
with very, very tired horses in front of him.
the 5 circling the drain is 8-1. One crazy horse who I'll mention for underneath spots. If you're taking an approach where you like the 9 and maybe you need some horses to use under, the 2 Fade the Noise. So let's follow his pattern through his 3 turf races. His career debut just doesn't fire on the dirt. They try him on the turf. He wins 6-1 at Ellis. They go over to Saratoga on August the 19th. He's inside. He's 4th or 5th. He runs into some traffic and he wants to go. He just kind of gets stuck in a bad spot. I didn't think the race was that bad. Again, if you're looking at horses like Oxymore, you see Oxymore dusted fantastic again back when they raced early on in middle of 2022. Then Fade the Noise shows back up on April 16th, just completely missed the break. I mean, it's one of those races you put a line right through it. This horse was just done early. So, Gaffleone jumps aboard for Maker. He's going to be a massive price. I can be a little forgiving for those. I don't know if he's good enough to win, but I could see him being more forwardly placed in here and hanging around and finishing second or third at a big price. So maybe a bottoms of exotics horses. Fade the Noise. They're all gonna have to beat the 9. So.
Right, exactly. I would use the 6 if you're going to use a big bomb. You would use the 2. We agree on circling the drain, but I still think it's going to be very, very difficult to beat the 9. So I didn't delve that much further than the exact does because I just can't. I can't find that much creative to use on top.
We get to the Preakness, the second jewel of racing's Triple Crown. Only one horse returning in the Preakness that ran in the Kentucky Derby a few weeks ago, and that is your Kentucky Derby winner, Mage. In Angela, we don't have to sugarcoat it. It's just not the strongest group that's lined up for the